Thank you.
Any questions? You know where to How you doing? Good, how are you?
Good, how are you? Yeah, usually say like support work usually 20 minutes. I mean, yes, I'm not too shy. I'll give the right advice. I appreciate Yep. Yeah, I guess so. There's quite a few.
Oh, okay.
Give it to me, I'll give it to you later. I can hold over here for
Okay.
I brought the one. I guess just okay. Okay, got it.
No, I started. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday, November the 20th. To start the meeting, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be aware this meeting is being live streamed on the Township YouTube channel. And also the meeting may be audio or video recorded by people present in the room. Today's meeting only has one item of business, but before we start that, I'd just like to open it up for the opportunity for public comment for any new business that is not on the agenda, so anything that is not associated with the hearing tonight. If you'd like to raise new business or ask a question of the board or staff, please do so now. Ms. Swart?
Good evening. Margie Swart. I wasn't prepared, but since you're giving me the opportunity, I'm going to take it. Since the budget is being discussed tomorrow evening, I haven't done the figures, but I think we're probably between $3 and $4 million more in our general fund than we anticipated having. And in years past, I brought up the recommendation that we take some of that surplus before this year end and transfer those funds into capital reserve. I see that next year's budget is projected to have a $1.3 million deficit. So if we take some of that $3 to $4 million, transfer the 1.3 by the end of the year, then you have a zero revenues and expenses even out for next year. So just like you to all think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. We'll obviously be able to talk about that tomorrow night, so thanks for the heads up, and we'll make sure Christine's ready to answer that specific question. Is there anyone else with a question for the board? New business question? Very good, then we are ready to move on to the one item of business tonight, which is a conditional use hearing number 2, 2023. There are formal processes for conditional use hearing. So I'm going to turn this over to our solicitor, Kristen Camp, and she will explain the process and open the hearing.
Thank you. So this is a conditional use application of Parkway 929 SH LLC and 929 SH Realty Group LP. They are seeking conditional use approval under Section 84-18.I4 of the West Goshen Township Zoning Ordinance to develop a convenience store with a retail sale of gasoline on a portion of the property located at 929 South High Street, which is Chester County Tax Parcel 52-7-16. So as the chairman mentioned, this is a zoning hearing, and there is a court reporter, Jim, that's taking down everything everybody says. So one of the biggest rules we all have to follow is only one person can speak at a time, and you have to be recognized by the board to be speaking. So at first I'm going to introduce board exhibits, and these are really just to indicate what the application is about and that the township has followed the procedural requirements in order to hold a conditional use hearing. The first one is the actual conditional use application, and that was mailed to West Goshen Township on September 12th, 2023. That's board exhibit 1. Board exhibit 2 is the plan that accompanied the application, and that was prepared by RGS Associates. It had 9 sheets, and it was dated September 12th, 2023. The third exhibit is just an aerial tax map of the property. Board exhibit 4 is a letter from the applicant's counsel, Debbie Shulsky, extending the date to hold the hearing. So that letter was dated September 21, 2023, and she, on behalf of the applicant, agreed that tonight's hearing was being timely held. Board exhibit 5, tonight's hearing was advertised in the Daily Local News on November 3rd and November 10th, and B5 is the proof of publication of those ads. Board exhibit 6 is an affidavit of posting and photographs of the posting. The property, which is the subject of the application, had to be posted at least 7 days prior to the hearing. That was actually done on October 30th, 2023. Board exhibit 7 is a letter that the township manager, Chris Bayshore, sent to neighboring property owners, and that letter was dated November 2nd, 2023, advising them of the hearing. Board exhibit 8 is the minutes from the West Goshen Township Planning Commission meeting dated October 10th, 2023, where the applicant appeared to present their application. Board exhibit 9 is the Planning Commission meeting minutes from November 14th, which was just last week, where again the applicant presented their application and the Planning Commission recommended that the board not approve the application. Board Exhibit 10 is a letter from the Township's traffic engineer, McCormick and Taylor, and that letter is dated November 7th, 2023. And the last Board Exhibit 11, is the Zoning Hearing Board opinion in order dated June 5th, 2023. So the applicants started their application process seeking 2 variances from the Zoning Hearing Board. One was to have the convenience store size exceed the size that's permitted under the ordinance. The Zoning Hearing Board denied that request. The applicant also requested a variance to allow, I believe, the trash dumpster to be located closer to the property boundary than the ordinance allowed, and the Zoning Hearing Board did grant that request. So that's, I wanted the board to have that in the record as the Board Exhibit 11. So I'm going to explain what a conditional use hearing is and what the process, how the process will go. We will now, first, Ms. Schultzke, do you have any objection to the admission of Board Exhibit 1 through 11?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. So those will be admitted. I'm going to, in a minute, ask if there's anybody in the audience that is a property owner or a property tenant of property in close proximity to the applicant's property at 929 South High Street. If you own or rent property in close proximity, and there's no set distance of what close proximity means, basically a mile is too far away, a half mile is probably about right. You can ask to be a party in the process. Being a party means that you can cross-examine the applicant's witnesses and you can present your own evidence that you want the board to consider on this application. If you're a neighbor that just is interested in the process and you want the board to be aware of your concerns, you don't have to be recognized as a party. You do have to be a party if you intend to present any evidence or if you would like to leave open the opportunity to appeal the board's decision. And you have to ask for party status tonight. If we end up having a second hearing and a neighbor wasn't able to come, we will give them the opportunity at a second hearing to ask for party status. So what I'm going to do right now is go off the record. Anybody that wishes to be a party, I'm going to ask that you come forward and fill out the form. You have to put your name and address legibly so I can read it. Most importantly is your email, because that's how we're going to communicate with you. After we take these back, we're going to ask the applicant if they have any objection to you being a party. It's ultimately the board's decision. So let's go off the record for a second. Anybody in the audience who wants to be a party, please come forward and fill this form out. If you are here, husband and wife, or 2 people own the property together, you both should be, if you're asking together, you should both be listed on this paper. You can borrow this. Oh, just one on one form. Yeah. Here you go. Sure, but I need it back. That's what I am. Who else? No, I need that now. No, I need that. I need those now because we have to ask the applicant if they object to you being a party. Let's see if I have any more. Your address. Your address. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Just put your address. How close do you live to this property? How close is your property approximately? Is it the same block? Is it a quarter mile? And then if you're not represented by council, you don't want to. Travis Crum at Travis. Crum.Travis. Got it. Yeah, don't worry about filling out the top, the case application, and if you're not represented by counsel, then you don't need to fill out the last line. Goshen Group 1. Daniel Marcus Sr. Got it. That's okay. Jay Daniel. Got it. Just make sure I can read it. Molly Sam 1 at Verizon.net. Okay. Let me just make sure I can read this. Andrew DES.6.19. Okay, it doesn't have to be caps, does it? Okay, Andrew DES.6.19. Great. And your Desiderio. Great. Sure. Julie, can I just make sure I can read this? Julie. Okay, 10S10. Got it. Okay, thank you, Julie. Great. Okay, so can you fill it out? I'm going to get started. That's okay. Just, could you do a phone number then? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Let me make sure I can read this. Can you pronounce that? Is it Tarun Aurora? Okay, Tarun. Thank you. Okay. No, he has to be here. He's a partner. Right, but no, if he's not here, he's going to have to fill his own form. dialbiz@gmail.com. Okay. Yes. Okay, why don't I start? I know there's one other person filling out the forms. So I'm going to ask the applicant, I'm going to let her know who has requested party status and how close they are saying that the property is to the applicant's property, and then she can object. It's ultimately the board's decision. So the first one is HAR, HARDYAZ. The
I'm sorry, DYAS.
Okay. Well, you're not listing the property that you own that's in close proximity. You're listing your address. What's the property? Okay, so that's okay. What is the property that you're?
851 South High Street.
Okay. Which is, you're saying, approximately 2 blocks. Okay. Ms. Shulsky, any objection to Mr. Dial being a party?
I think I hopefully can help expedite this to the extent that any of the neighbors who filled out this form have received a public notice from the township indicating that the hearing tonight. I would not object to their party status with one caveat. If it becomes apparent during the course of the hearing that the standing was based solely on competition, then at that point I may reserve my right to object to that person's party status for obvious reasons that case law supported, that you can't be a party just to compete with business operations.
Okay, well, I didn't have a chance to look through the list, so Mr. Dowd, I'm assuming you received notice of tonight's hearing? Okay, so you will be admitted then. The second one was Tarun Aurora. Tarun, what is the property address of 851 South High? Do you own it individually or together? But it should be your partnership name that's asking for party status. So what is the name of the property owner of that property? Okay, because that should be the property owner. And that's where, if your other partner doesn't have to be here because you're just going to list the property owner. You can just put it up here. Wonderful. Okay, so we will start that over. It sounds like Mr. Dial does not need individual party status, but is requesting party status for Aurora Estates LLC as the corporate owner of 851 South High Street. Ms. Shulsky, I'm assuming no objection.
No objection, provided that entity received notice of tonight's hearing.
Okay.
And subject to what I've reserved for it, making a future objection if it becomes apparent it was based solely on business competition.
Okay. Jeanette Kramer,
Yes.
can you give us your property address?
6 West Rose Avenue.
Did you get notice of tonight's hearing?
I did.
Okay, so no objection.
No objection.
You will be admitted as a party. Thank you. Julie Pritchard,
Julie Pritchard.
and what is your property address? 857 Spruce Avenue. Okay, and did you get notice of tonight's hearing? You have to say it verbally.
I'm sorry, I did.
Okay, so you will be admitted as a party.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew DeSiderio. I knew I was going to mess that up. It's DESIDERIO at 930 Pritchard Avenue. And I assume you received notice of tonight's hearing.
I did.
So he will also be admitted. Robert Stratton, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And with your wife as well?
Yes.
Molly?
N-I-N-A.
N-I-N-A. And it's at 860 Spruce Avenue.
Correct.
And you received notice of tonight's hearing, so you will be admitted as a party.
Yes.
Okay? Jill DeBenny, property owner of 930 South High Street, also received notice of the hearing and therefore will be admitted. Daniel Murphy Sr., property address, is it 8 Yorktown Avenue?
That's correct.
And did you receive notice of tonight's hearing?
I did.
Okay, so you will also be admitted. And the last one is Travis Crum at 9 Yorktown Avenue. Mr. Crum, did you also receive notice of the hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so you will also be admitted. So all of these property owners are admitted as parties. Let me explain the process. We're going to now turn it over to Ms. Shulsky. She's going to present the evidence that she has with her expert witnesses. They're all going to be sworn in by the court reporter. They're going to give their testimony. I'm then going to turn it over to the board to see if they have any questions of the witness. And then I'm going to turn it over to the parties and go down the list to see if you have questions, specifically questions of the witness about the testimony that they provided. You're not making any statements, you're not presenting any evidence, you're simply asking questions if you have any. The applicant will go through her entire case, however many witnesses she chooses to call. The township consultants may have evidence to present, and then we'll turn it over to the neighbors or the parties. If you want to present evidence, you can call witnesses or you can just provide your own testimony. Likely that will not happen tonight. The board has decided that they're going to give the applicant till about 8 p.m. tonight to present their case. If we don't finish, which likely we won't, we'll pick another date that we'll come back and convene the hearing again. So if you're not a party, but you're interested in the matter, after all the evidence is presented by the applicant, potentially the township consultants and the parties, you will be given an opportunity to just make public comment to the board, and the board can take that into consideration when rendering their decision. Once the evidence has all been put into the record, the board closes the evidentiary portion, and then they have 45 days to render a decision. And that decision has to be done at a public meeting of the board, and in front of everybody, they'll make a motion, second, and then they act on the application. Does anybody have any questions on the process that the board is going to follow? Can you please come forward and you have to state your name so the court reporter can write it down. He has to be able to identify who's speaking, and that's the other thing, is that you have to be recognized so the court reporter can get your name before you ask a question or speak.
Thank you. My name is Dan Murphy, 8 Yorktown Avenue. My objection is to the attorney's objection, because we happen to have people here who own businesses within a quarter mile of the proposed Wawa. So I don't think we should exclude that as part of the testimony.
She hasn't. She has for right now said that they can be a party, but if throughout their presentation of the case, she finds or she believes or makes the assertion that the only reason they're being a party is to stop competition, then the board can consider that to exclude them as a party. We haven't done that yet. So for right now, your comment is premature because she has said they can act as a party.
I just wanted clarification.
Okay, sure. All right, so let's turn it over now. Does the board have any questions on the proceeding?
I just have one question for clarification. In any subsequent hearing, could any resident come before this body and request to become a party to the proceedings?
Yes, John, I typically do allow that. So if somebody, especially given a holiday week, if somebody was away and they come to the next hearing and ask to be a party, and provided that they own or lease property in close proximity, they can ask for party status.
Thank you.
Okay? Ms. Shulsky, your case.
Good evening. For the record, my name's Debbie Shulsky. I'm with the firm of Riley, Viper, Hahn, and Collet-Greco. I'm here representing the applicant this evening. As you're well aware, we're here tonight for your review of a conditional use application to allow for the redevelopment of the existing Parkway Shopping Center for proposed convenience store use. Just by way of some very brief background before we actually get into the evidence and the testimony this evening, I believe most of you are very familiar with this shopping center. It's been part of the West Goshen community for a number of years. At one time, it was a very successful, thriving center that was fully occupied. Unfortunately, the last several years, it has not been fully occupied. The redevelopment this evening involves, and you'll hear this through the testimony of my witnesses, it will involve the demolition of approximately 27,000 square feet of the existing shopping center and reconstruction of a proposed 5,300 square foot Wawa, which your ordinance allows in this particular zoning district by conditional use approval. I know that a number of you have been on this board for a number of years, and therefore you're very familiar with what the conditional use standards are, and I know your solicitor obviously is very familiar as well, and we'll explain that to you if you have any questions. But essentially, a conditional use is a permitted by right use subject to the applicant demonstrating compliance with your specific ordinance standards. In your ordinance, you do have a number of specific standards that govern the convenience store with the sale of gas use. We intend to go through all of those standards with you this evening through our witnesses and a number of exhibits to demonstrate that we meet those standards. Once we demonstrate compliance with the specific standards, it's determined that the use is appropriate and suitable for the area, given that it's legislatively zoned for this use. And at that time, the burden would then switch to any objectors to demonstrate that there's a negative detrimental impact to the health, safety, and welfare exceeding those which may normally be expected from the same type of use. So it's not a comparison to another use that may be allowed in the district. It has to be detrimental exceeding those in comparison to the same type of use. So with that introduction, I want to swear our witnesses in. I don't know if you want to swear them all in or do it one by one.
How many do you have?
We have 4.
I might as well do it now. Well, stand up, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, or so you affirm? Thank you.
And Debbie, just so it might be helpful for the board as well as for the audience to understand that each witness is going to have a specific subject matter expertise. Do you mind just identifying who your witnesses are and what the main thrust of their testimony will be?
Certainly. The first witness will be Joe Waters, and he's essentially going to be testifying as to standing to establish their right to proceed with this application and on behalf of the property owner to explain some of the existing conditions and operations of the existing Parkway Center. Our second witness is going to be Mike Spiegel with Wawa, and he's going to get into more of the operations of the proposal. He's going to leave the actual technical design issues more to our site designer, our landscape architect, who will be testifying third, and that'll be Alex Field. He'll go through predominantly the majority of the testimony with respect to the site plan, landscape, and the proposal, the number of exhibits that are part of your package, which we'll be able to walk you through this evening, as well as the conditional use standards, both the specific and general standards. And then last but not least, the testimony that everybody loves to hear. Our traffic consultant will be Guy DiMartino, with traffic planning and design, and he'll obviously testify as to any traffic impact with respect to the plan and improvements and related testimony with respect to your conditional use standards relative to traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So Joe Waters, I guess, is starting.
Yep. It's okay for him to sit here, or?
As long as everybody can hear him. Do you think it might be easier if you're up here, so that
With a microphone.
well, just because the audience wants to see you as well.
Oh,
And I don't want your back to the parties.
Okay. Then I'll give you the microphone, and I'll just talk loud.
Can this move over?
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, Joe Waters. I'm with Waters Retail Group. Address is 200 Old Forge Lane, Suite 201, Kennett Square, PA 19348.
Is the mic working?
Can you hear me now?
Better now.
Sorry.
And with whom are you employed in what capacity?
I'm the president of the Waters Retail Group.
And the subject property is owned by Parkway 929 SH LLC and 929 SH Realty Group LP, correct?
That's correct, and introduce the Exhibit A3,
Yes.
the property
And
deed.
Exhibit A3 is in the board's package, and that's a copy of the deed confirming the ownership of the property. And Waters Retail Group is the manager of the shopping center, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how long has Waters Retail Group been managing this shopping center?
Approximately 7 years.
And are you authorized to appear and make representations on behalf of the applicant and the owner?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with the property that's subject to tonight's hearing?
Yes, very familiar.
And I'm going to refer you to Exhibit A4. Maybe have somebody pick that up. And our landscape architect will go through this exhibit in more detail, but can you just generally describe for the board and the public the existing conditions on the property?
And just so the parties know, I will email everybody the board exhibits and the applicant exhibits tomorrow, so you'll have them in electronic format.
The property is currently improved with a 49,260 square foot shopping center and associated parking. There's also a few accessory structures on the property and an existing concrete pad adjacent to Route 202. And then there's also McDonald's on the adjacent parcel that shares access to the shopping center.
And is the shopping center currently occupied with tenants, and if not, what percentage of the space would you say is occupied?
The shopping center is currently about 50% occupied.
And do you know how many years the shopping center has been operating with this lower capacity in terms of the tenants?
It's been roughly 50% for probably the last 2 years. Prior to that, Rite Aid was in there, and it was roughly 60 to 65% for several years prior to that.
To the best of your knowledge, was the center at one time fully occupied in a successful, thriving shopping center?
It definitely was. It was constructed in the 60s, and it thrived for many years.
And are you familiar with the proposal and what's being proposed as part of this application this evening?
Yes, I am.
And we have a representative from Wawa and as well as from RGS who's going to go into the more specific details of that, but can you just generally explain what's being proposed?
Generally, we're proposing to demolish about half of the existing shopping center and constructing 5,330 square foot Wawa convenience store with gasoline pumps, as well as improvements to the existing drive aisle and the parking area as well.
And will you be working with your existing tenants to relocate any tenants who wish to remain in the shopping center?
Definitely. Our goal would be to relocate any tenants that wish to remain.
And is Colonial Meats one of the tenants that intends to remain in the center?
Yes, they do.
And that's all the questions I have of this witness.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Waters?
Yeah, I have one question for you, Mr. Waters. The parcel that the McDonald's sits on is the only entry and exit to that parcel through an easement on this property?
The current ownership structure for the property is a condominium, and the McDonald's parcel, there's 2 units currently. McDonald's is unit 1, and the balance of the shopping center is unit 2. So yes, they do share access to the fully signalized intersection.
Does that ownership structure require an easement or not?
It's part of the declaration for condominium.
So Sean, any of the driveways would be considered common areas. So the declaration of condominium creates the units. So McDonald's is 1 unit, and I assume the rest of the shopping center is another unit. And then the common areas are basically owned proportionally by both unit owner 1 and unit owner 2. So it serves the same purpose as like an easement would. They each have the ability to use those common areas, and I'm sure the condominium declaration specifies each of their allocation for common expenses.
Thank you.
I do have a question though with that. So would there be a proposal to amend that declaration if the Wawa were to go forward?
Yes, there would be a third unit that would be created, assuming obviously all the appropriate approvals through the municipality.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board for Mr. Waters?
Just a follow-up question. On that portion of the existing retail that's looking to be demolished, are you proposing for any current tenants there to be relocated in another part of the complex?
Any tenants in this section that would be demolished, yes, we would work
Does
with
that
them to
include
relocate.
cemeteries as well?
Potentially, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question relative to the HOA bylaws. I'm assuming there'd either be an amendment or a revision to the existing bylaws if this parcel was put into 3 parcels versus 2 right now currently.
It would be a change to the declaration, yes.
The declaration of
The
bylaws.
condo.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you're clear, the declaration is a different document than the bylaws.
Right.
But she's saying that yes, there would have to be an amendment to the declaration to create a third unit. And that would be something the township would have the right to review and make sure it's consistent with that or with whatever plan approvals are granted. Okay. So any more questions from the board for Mr. Waters? Okay, I'm going to turn it over and just go down the list. If you're a party, Aurora Estates LLC, do you have any questions specific to Mr. Waters?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Kramer, do you have any questions specific to Mr. Waters?
No.
Ms. Pritchard? Any questions for this witness?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Mr. I'm going to have to phonetically spell it. Desiderator.
Desideraria.
Des-
No, I don't.
Mr. Stratton?
No.
Ms. DeBenny? No. Mr. Murphy?
No.
And Mr. Crum?
No.
Okay, thank you. You can move on to your next witness.
Thank you.
Our second witness is Michael Spiegel. I don't have one. Can you not hear me?
I cannot hear you well.
There might be another
You're welcome
mic.
to sit up next to me if you would like. That's-
Hang on a minute. There might be another microphone.
Can everyone else hear me? I'll try and talk louder.
Sorry to you.
Thank you very much. Got it? Is it on? Oh, it's on. Better? Okay. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Spiegel, could you please state your name and business address?
Sure. Michael Spiegel, business address is 260 South Baltimore Pike. That's in Wawa, PA 19063.
And with whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed with Wawa Incorporated.
And how long have you been with Wawa?
I am in my 9th year with Wawa.
And are you also a resident of West Goshen Township?
I am. I've been a resident here for 17 years.
Can you provide the board with some background and history about Wawa, including number of stores and the region that Wawa serves?
Sure, absolutely. So Wawa's been around in existence as a convenience store since the early 1960s. Prior to that, we actually were a foundry that started in the 1800s. Then we started to have some dairy business that brought us into the late 1800s, and then we started doing the convenience store. I think our first one opened in 1963.
And can you explain to this board why Wawa is interested in this particular location?
Sure. What we look for in the locations, we like to put our stores, whether they're the fuel stores or the non-fuel stores. We look for locations, obviously, where there's ample population, significant traffic, locations where there's proper access, visibility, a variety of things. Ideal situation would be, as they call it, main and main, two major intersections coming together. We also look for communities that either we're already a part of or look to be a part of, and we think that we'd be successful being a part of that.
And this particular location is near one of your existing First Legacy stores, is that correct?
It is. It's literally just a couple of properties away.
And we'll get into this a little bit more later on in the testimony, but this would be, the proposed site would be a relocation of that existing store.
That is correct. And we are planning to relocate that store to this location.
And can you generally explain what Wawa is proposing for the property? Very high level, because we're going to have another witness that'll be actually going through the specifics of the site plan.
Absolutely. So on the screen here is an exhibit, I believe that's A5. This shows a partial site plan that shows what we are proposing for the Wawa use. It also shows as an aerial view of the remaining shopping center and McDonald's and some of the surrounding roadways.
And the building shown on this current plan, A5, is different than the building that this board may have previously seen as prior to us going before the zoning hearing board. Is that correct?
That is correct. This building here is 5,300 square feet. Approximately the site that or the building that we were proposing initially was 6,049 square feet.
And referring your attention to exhibits A6 and A7, these are elevation plans. Can you explain generally what the exterior of the building will look like?
Sure. I'm going to bring that up so everyone can see here. So on this exhibit, this is what we're proposing for our building. Very typical of a lot of our newer stores in the area. This is what we call a W50 front-only building. So this building only has one entrance. It's on the front of the building. The top right is a front view with our Wawa letters and an overhang, and also our main entrance. To the left and to the bottom of the page are the two views on either side of the building. And then in the middle of the page to the left is our rear of the building, which has some delivery doors, trash doors, and other access routes, primarily meant for our deliveries and for our associates.
So this particular store is only a front-only building, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the entrance for customers is only at the front of the building.
And then Exhibit A8 is elevation plan showing the proposed gas pumps, correct? I'm sorry, Exhibit A7.
Yep, it is. Let me open and show that. So it's a combination of a view of our canopy, what we're proposing, and also a view of our trash enclosure on all sides.
And you mentioned that this store is intended to replace the existing store that's just north of the site, correct?
That is correct.
Referring you to Exhibit A8, is that an aerial of the existing Wawa on High Street?
That is, yes, that is a view of our store.
And how old is that store, and can you explain why it's being replaced?
Sure. That store was built in October of 1968. It is, as we call them, a legacy store, which is our older non-fuel stores. There's several reasons why we were looking for and have been looking for to replace this store. Because of its size, and this store is just around 3,200 square feet, it provides a lot of challenges both inside the store and outside the store. Inside the store, it's much smaller than our current stores. And what that does is that restricts us on a variety of different things. It restricts us on what we can offer our customers, the type of products that we can offer them. It also gives limitations on how much space and how much room we have inside the store for both our associates to work. It also affects storage, how much we can store in a store. And then it also has some effect on ADA requirements and the challenges and difficulties trying to meet those requirements.
And the existing store is 24 hours operation, is that correct?
It is 24 hours operations.
And the proposed store would be 24 hours as well?
Correct.
Now, another witness is going to discuss the movements, the internal circulation patterns with respect to deliveries that Wawa receives, but can you describe for the board and the public the types of deliveries and how often the deliveries will be made?
Sure. So most of our deliveries, we have roughly 5 varieties of deliveries. For this particular store, there wouldn't be any fuel deliveries that are existing here, but for our new store, we would have fuel deliveries. Those are usually 1 to 2 times per day, and it's as needed basis. Obviously, different times of the year and different times of the week require us to bring in different amount of fuel. Each tanker does have a different variety of fuel. We obviously sell different grades of fuel, so that's why for the number of deliveries. The next one that we have is what we call it's being made by McLean is the name of the business. They provide all of our non-perishable cups and other products, napkins, so on and so forth. That's usually every other day, roughly. We do have our dairy products that comes in, and that's in a Wawa tractor trailer. That is usually every other day also, and that also contains not just our dairy products, but it has our branded name products. We have waters, we have a variety of juices, iced teas, so on and so forth. We also have what we call our DSD vendors. So those are our external vendors. So you have Coke, Pepsi, Frito-Lay, so on and so forth. Those come also on various times of the week, I'd say every other day roughly. And those deliveries are also during the day. Most of these deliveries are done during the day. We also have what we call fresh channels. So this would be all of our products that are fresh, like our bagels, muffins, donuts, pretzels, so on and so forth. And those deliveries are also made during the day. There are other deliveries. This is not really a delivery, it's more of a pickup. This is our trash pickup and recyclables. Those are usually done on our new stores during the daytime. We rarely have anything into the evenings. Those at the new store location, because there is a trash enclosure, does allow us to drive one of our trash or recyclable trucks directly into the enclosure, lift up the bins, dump them, and then vacate the property. It does allow for them to be on the site for a very short period of time. Our existing store, as you see here on the screen, which they call is a difficult challenge with respect to trash, where it's almost like a hand ability to remove the trash between where our associates have to bring it into the trash corral, which is on the bottom, or have totes outside in some degree. So there are definitely a lot of challenges for the existing conditions.
Does Wawa have a manager or employee on shift who coordinates and is aware of these scheduled deliveries?
So at each of our shifts, we roughly have 3 shifts during the day, or during the course of the 24-hour day. All of them will have at least one M level, which is a manager level on staff, whether it's our general manager for the store, assistant manager, or one of the other levels, but there's always somebody that's there that has a manager ability.
The Wawa pad site for this project at the Parkway is approximately 2.8 acres in size, correct?
That is correct.
And other than your older legacy store, is the subject pad site generally consistent with the size of some of your other Wawa locations?
It is. Some of our locations can be slightly smaller, some can be slightly larger. It's significantly larger than our current store location, which is only 0.4 acres.
And do you know the size of the pad site for the Wawa at 5 Points?
I believe that is 2 acres.
Are you familiar with that existing Wawa at 5 Points?
I'm very familiar. That is the closest Wawa to where I live. It is the Wawa I go to probably half a dozen times a week.
And can you explain, because I know this issue came up before the Planning Commission, can you explain the design of the Wawa at 5 Points in comparison to the proposed site on High Street? And feel free to refer to several exhibits which we have marked, which is Exhibit A10, the approved plan for 5 Points, as well as Exhibit that's A9. And then Exhibit A10 is a comparison of the 5 Points with the Parkway site, and A11 is a blow-up showing the proposed Wawa.
So the one I have up here is A10. So this gives you a view. So our store on 5 Points Road is on to the left side of the page, which also has a CVS and the bank adjacent to us. The picture on the right is the one for our proposed store on South High Street. There are definitely several challenges to our original store, our store on 5 Points Road, which was built in 2015. The store itself, not just being on a smaller lot, but also it's similar in the sense that it's got a front entrance only. There are caveats to it with respect to deliveries, for instance, at the rear of the store. As you can see, because of the property shape, there is a little bit of a point that comes in, unfortunately, directly behind our store, which I would say adds to a slightly, or a pinch point when it comes to not just deliveries, but also circulation of traffic, which can sometimes make the appearance or have some appearance that it's a very busy store. It also allows for exiting of the customers and associates for the CVS and the adjacent bank. So there's several of those use that entrance onto 5 Points Road to get to the traffic light.
Do you expect the proposed Wawa Parkway to be as busy of a store in terms of sales and traffic generated from the site?
We'd like to say that all of our stores will become successful. Our anticipation, because obviously the store has not been built yet, our expectation is that that will not be as busy as our store on 5 Points Road.
And this last question I'm going to ask you also came up at the Planning Commission meeting. So are there any other locations that you're familiar with that are similar to this one in terms of having one access point coming into the drive aisle for the shopping center in which Wawa's taken access from?
We have several, not just in the area, but throughout, I would say, this region. There's a couple that we haven't, that have been built in recent years where we've had actually even only one entrance and exit at one location. This one has, what we're proposing here is one full movement entrance and then one right-in entrance here at this location. It's helpful in the area. There's two in Downingtown that I know of that are in similar situations with respect to the access points. And I'd say for the most part, a majority of our sites try to have at least more than one access point. It allows for ease of access, both egress and ingress, and in our opinion, makes it for a safer condition.
That's all the questions I have of this witness.
Board members have any questions for Mr. Spiegel?
Yes, I do, actually. I have a couple of questions from a safety standpoint and environmental a little bit too.
Okay.
Next couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind answering them. I'm assuming they're double wall tanks underground.
Yes, they are fiberglass double wall tanks.
Okay, do you know if the interstitial space is dry or brine?
It's brine filled.
Okay. And as far as the leak detection alarm system, what's the process? I know the alarm's going to alarm at the location, but do you have remote access to see if any of the leak detector or any of the alarms trigger?
We do. It goes back to our corporate office, and we also have some third-party vendors that can respond quickly as an emergency,
okay.
And they're also notified.
Okay, so the type of alarm is also notified to corporate?
Correct.
In the event that tanks are leaking or anything happens at that location?
Correct.
As far as the stage 1 vapor recovery, is that a dual or a coaxial?
I believe it's, actually it's starting to be outdated with the recovery because a lot of what happens now, some of the cars offer that. Yeah, so it is, yes. So there is a vapor recovery system, although it almost seems to be like an archaic, and they're starting to get away from that. For our specific site, I'm trying to think here if at the tanks, because I know when we have the fill ports, like when our tankers are actually
right.
filling up, they have a recovery system.
Right, that's the stage 1.
That's the stage 1,
and then
correct.
Stage 2 would be when the customer
Customer itself, yes, exactly. Both of them are still in play, although, like I said, it's almost an outdated item, especially for the customers, because now the newer cars,
right.
They can accompany them.
But it's still required.
It's still required, yes.
Right,
That's
as
right.
of today.
As of today, it is.
Yeah.
It is today.
So your stage 2, you're not sure if it's a balance or a back assist?
I am not sure 100%
Okay.
what the stage 2 is. I know we do have it,
Okay.
but I'm not sure which one it is.
Or the stage 1, you're not quite sure what that is. Okay. I guess, and you also have the overflow alarm. I'm assuming it's a Vita route?
We do, yes. Vita's a type of, we have a similar alarm system. It's not the same company
Okay.
brand as
Right.
Vita, but we do have it, yes. So
Okay.
it does for a variety of different things. So when it's up to, I believe it's 90%,
Right.
it gives an alarm. If it gets 95, there's a shut-off available with it.
Okay. And just two other questions. Is your employee certified as an operator ABC for
They are.
emergencies?
They have to be.
Okay. And then I didn't see any place for electrical vehicles. Do you plan on having electrical vehicles at the Wawa there, at that location?
So as you can see from our existing store on 5 Points Road, EV charging with this particular company was Tesla that chose this
Right.
location. We do have them here. We have actually over 100 stores now, over 100 stores that have EV charging, and it's growing exponentially. Our intent is to have EV at all of our stores. Unfortunately, we as Wawa don't make that final determination. That's the charging companies that decide if they choose a location. They look at it from a standpoint of customers, where their customers are, and also travel routes and proximity to major highways, major roadways, so on and so forth. Obviously, the new location is by Route 202, which in our opinion is a major route in Chester County and beyond. But unfortunately, it's not our decision. This is a decision by the charging companies.
Okay. Do you have an area where you're considering to possibly put it in, if they do come forth and ask you to put it in?
So when we get to the land development stage, we usually try to label as potential or future EV charging locations. It's our intent to do that on our plans where we can, because that way, if they choose to, and they go through the approval process separate. So Tesla will go apply for their own transformer, they'll apply for their own permits and everything else. But we give them the location. That way, we can at least somewhat determine where they go, because we have an idea of what our travel routes and our deliveries and all that will happen around the store. So we pick a location for their location or their spaces with a purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a couple of questions. The store on 5 Points Road, do you happen to know what the square footage is of that store? Okay.
That's 5,100 square feet, roughly.
If you look at Exhibit A9, it's written on there. It says 5,051 square feet. On the plan, it's marked A9.
I see 5,051 square feet. So just a little bit over 5,000 square feet.
Correct.
And what's the size of the original proposal for the store on High Street?
The original proposal was actually, we were even initially larger than that. We were 6,500 square feet initially. That was a store design that is now being used in the other states that we're going into and other states besides Pennsylvania. The reason why for that, Pennsylvania for beer and wine sales requires 30 seats. In order to have a liquor license to allow for that, you have to have more space in the retail area. So our Pennsylvania stores, we try to build, or usually build them larger than some of our other locations. The 6,500 square foot building that was proposed here initially was going to be able to provide for that initially. However, some of our other prototypes, and I would call them some of our older prototypes, for instance, there was a 6,049 square foot building, which was the size prior to the current size of the store, was also able to provide for beer and wine sales based on its layout. Now that store was a front and rear entrance. When we went to the smaller store, because there were denial for not allowing for that size building, the 5,300 square foot building actually does allow for the 30 seats because we don't have a rear entrance. So by having no rear entrance, it allows us to move some of our food service, storage, and other things further to the back side of the building. And that allows us to actually have room for beer and wine sales and the 30 seats that are required for that.
So in the proposal you're coming before the board tonight, you have intention to be able to sell beer and wine, is that correct?
All of our stores, and we're even putting it, with liquor licenses in Pennsylvania, we are looking to add beer and wine where we can. We're allowed to. We feel that as part of today's offering. I mean, it's not just convenience stores that are doing it; it's grocery stores that are doing it. It's one of those options that we prefer or we like to see as another offering for our customers. And it's not meant, there's a requirement of how much you're allowed to drink at the stores. Speaking with several of our general managers, it's almost rarely seen that anybody actually opens a beer in a store. It's usually meant for, most people just do it as purchase. There's a certain limitations per the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board that we're allowed to have that goes along with the sales of beer and wine, and how much they're able to purchase, how much they're able to consume, and how often we're allowed to sell them. We can't sell them 24/7. So there's restrictions there. But yes, we are, back to your original question, our intent is to do beer and wine at this location if we obtain a liquor license.
Okay, is the store at 5 Points Road, is that considered to be a successful store?
I would consider it a successful store, yes.
Okay. And that store is just a little bit over 5,000 square feet?
It is, correct.
Now, you mentioned in your testimony that you don't anticipate the proposed store on High Street to be as busy as the one on 5 Points Road. Can I ask what evidence you have that would substantiate or support that statement?
Well, the only thing we can look at is what we expect, what our expectation is for sales. The store that is at 5 Points Road and Westchester Pike, there you have two public roads, so you have access from both roads. You also have customers driving from both locations. So you have Westchester Pike Route 3, which obviously has a substantial amount of traffic, but you also have 5 Points Road, which also provides for more customers to come in and out. So that store, we feel like, based on the traffic in that location, is, it's a, yes, was it considered as what we're going to do at the store at South High Street? It was, but just knowing on South High Street and also the traffic counts on South High Street, which are less, our expectation was that our sales, we think, would be less.
Okay. Thank you.
I have just a two-part question. So,
Okay.
Sorry. So you mentioned that the fuel delivery is every day, it's twice a day?
1 to 2 times per day.
1 to 2 times per day for fuel. Can you just give me an idea of what that process looks like and also what time the fuel tankers usually arrive at the store?
Sure. Let me bring up our site plan again. And I'm going to zoom in here just so we can show a bit more about the...
So you're looking at Exhibit A5?
Sorry, this is Exhibit A5, yes, correct. So for this particular site, what we're looking for is, and this is, there's been some slight modifications, but for the most part, the fuel tanks are over here at the front of the canopy. For this particular site, the tanker would come in off of South High Street, come into the site, and it would navigate, and I'm not 100% sure, I think Alex will probably answer better, but we would navigate one direction around the canopy and park over the tank field. Our tanker trucks discharge from the passenger side of the truck. So when the driver pulls up to the site, pulls into above the tank field, it will park, hazards on. There's a safety process involved, which includes, bracing the vehicle with wheel chucks, and then, recording the time that he is arriving, and so on and so forth. There is fill ports. You can see some of these, I'd say the circles that are, some of the circles that are on them. Some of them are fill ports. Some of them are actually like what they call man ports, which gives you the ability to actually for an individual to climb down into the tank field, into the tanks themselves. But the fill ports, there is a connection collar within those fill ports. The tanker driver will connect to the tanker and connect to the fill ports. There is a collar that has a locking mechanism on it. And then once everything is secured, and then he'll be able to discharge the fuel. And then, as was mentioned before, if there is, during the operation, that he's getting close to the limits of the tank, at 90%, there is an alarm that goes off at the tank field. And if he continues to fill, and the tanker continues to fill to past 95%, there's actually a shutoff. And if that happens, he actually cannot disengage from the fill ports. He actually will have to wait there for a period of time until enough people have used fuel that the tank percentage volume actually goes down. So the drivers are very cognizant of that, because obviously that could take could take sometimes hours, depending on time of the day and where this location is.
Do you have an overfill flapper in addition to the...
Sorry, can you say that again?
Do you have an overfill flapper in addition to the alarm? Because that would be the only way to shut off with the 95%.
Yes, we do. You got a second question?
My
second question was, what time does this usually happen, or does it vary?
It varies, depends on the travel route, because usually with these tankers, they'll not just hit one store, they hit multiple stores. Most of our fuel, actually our fuel deliveries in general, during the daytime. We try to avoid having them come in during our peak times. It's not always a perfect planning schedule, because obviously they're going to different routes. We can't just have them sitting in the within the parking lot, because for the most part the parking lot isn't really meant for tractor trailers. They're the ideal situation, and I know our fuel team and our supply chain teams, they try to do a good job of scheduling them timing wise. That way they're hitting this store and some of the other stores in the area.
I have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Spiegel. The existing store that's going to be relocated, do you have any actual or estimated vehicle counts for that store, either peak traffic volumes or daily basis? Do you have data?
For the vehicles themselves, not really. It's more, we try to keep track of like the customer count, I would say. For that site, it's also challenging too, because there's only 25 parking spaces, I believe. And you go there during some times of the day, it may be all the parking spaces may be full. If there's a delivery, that might be taking up some parking spaces. And then at that point, sometimes we recognize that some people that would be a potential customer may not be able to come in and use our services because of that. But we do not count the vehicles that are out there. We have cameras set up around the site that if need be, if there was an emergency or something that came up that we had to respond, let's say the police department or something, about how many parking spaces were full and so on and so forth, we can do that, but we don't really keep track of the vehicle counts.
Okay, the second question is, I noticed on this would be exhibit 6, that there is a ice box storage for ice outside the building. It seems to be that most of the newest stores have ice storage within the building itself. I'm just wondering whether this storage of ice is inconsistent with our convenience store regulation that says there should be no outdoor display of products. Why is it put outside the store instead of inside the store?
So our typical ask is for not just a propane tank dispenser, but also for the ice chest to be located outside. We do have some stores based on either regulations or size of the stores where our ice is sometimes stored inside in the cooler, in the freezer, sorry. But for this particular site, I believe our initial request was for exterior ice.
And that would be fully enclosed, though, in a box, right?
Correct. It would be in a box. It would not be open. The box itself would be refrigerated.
I thought you couldn't advertise anywhere outside which would include the propane tanks and the ice.
Our existing store that is on 5 Points Road does have propane outside. It's labeled. There are safety requirements for that dispenser, so there's not just use requirements, but also safety requirements associated with that are printed on the actual box itself.
Okay, it didn't say in there that there's a lock and enclosure for the propane and secured.
It is. I mean, somebody can't just, you have to use a credit card, you have to, basically purchase a propane tank for it to dispense.
Okay.
So it's self-locking. And then the ice chest, same thing. The ice chest it's fully enclosed. It does say ice on it. I'm not sure if the ones that are at our current stores within the township, if they say the supplier or if it just says ice on it. It just is a notation.
Okay, so in the testimony I didn't see that. It just said that you had ice and propane outside because propane was not allowed to be inside the building.
Correct, yeah, that's a safety issue.
Just going back to the question of a comparable store, you obviously have exhibits here showing 5 Points as being something that's a similar expectation in terms of business. I think you said that 5 Points is going to be, in your view, a busier store than this new one, correct?
The 5 Point store is our expectation that it's going to be busier, or it is busier.
I wonder whether a better comparison really is 202 is such a major thoroughfare, and the Wawas along that. There's one up at Route 29 in Malvern, and then the nearest one southbound that I know of is down at Dilworth Town Road. So although you mentioned the traffic volume on South High as not being comparable to Westchester Pike, the 202 corridor is to me going to bring new business in it seems, off 202 to the convenience of a Wawa right there. So in terms of a comparable store, wouldn't one of the two I mentioned be potentially a more realistic comparison?
So the stores that you're mentioning, the one in Malvern, right off of 29, and which is right next to the Wegmans.
It is. It's right there,
Yep.
parallel to
That's what you're talking
202. Yeah.
And then the other store that you're referring to is down 202, downward by Dilworth Town, which is right next to the Audi dealership.
Exactly.
Correct. So the one at the Audi dealership, Dilworth Town, that store has there are some restrictions to that, and we've also noticed on access how to get into that store. To get into that store, you are restricted on 202 North because it is a divided highway. The only way to get into that is to make a turn onto Dilworth Town Road and then proceed to the entrance, which is near the rear. There's some challenges there based on what was required at that location for signage and so on and so forth. The one that's the one that's at Malvern, that store is actually one of our biggest standalone fuel store. That store is over 7,000 square feet. We only built 3 of them of that kind. The one that's further down by Naaman's Creek, that's the other store in Pennsylvania, and there's one in New Jersey. So 7,000 square feet, which is significantly larger than probably any of the other stores in this area. There's, in that parking lot, I'm not sure the exact square footage of that site, but it was large enough to put that size building and also have ample parking. So it's a difficult site to compare to because both in the size of the building and the size of the parking lot.
The one in Malvern's about, is it 20 pumps at that location? And the one at Dilworth Town is 10 or 12? And this one's 16, so it's kind of in between, it sounds like.
So I believe the one that's on Dilworth Town has 6 pumps, which is 12 fueling positions. The one in Malvern, it's a twin canopy, which is 2 separate canopies, double wing they call it. I believe that one has, I think each canopy has 5 dispensers, I believe. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But I believe that would give it 20 fueling positions.
Okay, so when you evaluate the business case for a location, do you estimate the volume of fuel sales given the knowledge you have about corridors like 202? Do you have an estimate of fuel volumes and traffic based on that?
So we have, we do try to estimate, and sometimes it's less than an art, it's a guess. We do try to estimate what the gallons are going to be based upon similar stores, similar access, similar locations. And the reason why I say similar locations, we look at this part of Chester County and how we do in this part versus say a store that's in Berks County or a store that's up in the Poconos. So we try to evaluate it on similar areas and what the customer is like there. How do our stores progress? How do our stores do in some of these areas? So it is by no means an exact determination. It is purely an estimate, and we try to do the best that we can to try to give ourselves an idea of what we will do. And then we also look for our operations. So we ask for our operations help because obviously those people are the ones that are at the stores, running the stores. We ask them what their opinions are, primarily on the management or above level. We look for them to give us some estimation based upon what their current counts are and what we think our new store will provide.
So do you have an estimate for this particular location that you could share?
We do have an estimate. Unfortunately, I cannot share that.
Would you say your average is about 500,000 gallons a month at your locations? Approximately, that would kind of gear towards what your volume will be in traffic and cars and...
We do have volumes that we like to say are in line with other retailers similar to us. Same thing, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to share the numbers that are close enough.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a couple questions.
I just want to follow up. You mentioned the size of the store. If you do get a license to allow it, you would be providing beer and wine products on site. How many stores do you have in Pennsylvania that have beer and wine being sold in their store?
I believe now we are, because we've been doing this now for a couple of years, it hasn't been, probably more than 5 years we've been adding beer and wine in stores in the Pennsylvania area. We've been selling beer and wine in Virginia, Florida, and the states that allow us without a liquor license. We've been doing that since basically those stores opened. Florida opened in 2012. Virginia has been decades we've been down there. For the Pennsylvania area, I believe we probably are close to 25 or 26. It's just an estimation, and we've been, I'm not sure what stores are opening with or without them in some other markets, but it's been increasing, obviously. Very similar to just some of our competitors, the Sheetz, the 7-Elevens, the grocery stores. Everybody is getting these licenses in Pennsylvania and putting in the beer and wine sales. Now, one thing to note is that we just do beer and wine sales. We don't do the hard liquor.
Understood. In those stores that have beer and wine products on the site, do you find that there's been a problem or increased problem of vagrancy, drinking, maybe not in the store, but in the parking lot, disorderly conduct, and assaults?
So we get asked this question quite a bit during some of our license hearings. We have not heard of really anything that's significant beyond, I would say, typical people that are either already coming onto the site, either inebriated or have stayed there beyond what they're, we try to limit customers to say with our signage, to limit customers how often they're there, that they're not loitering on our sites. So they, some of these locations that we currently have the beer and wine sales, talking to those store managers, I have not heard of any instances where there's been an issue. Like I said, besides people that are already coming onto the site inebriated, or people that are loitering beyond their time frame that are already there, but not there for the beer and wine sales.
But you don't have any data or statistics to substantiate that?
I do not have any data or statistics for that. No,
It's just your opinion.
Correct.
Another question for you. I'm familiar with the 5 Point store also that's in my neighborhood. In fact, I'm one of those who probably changed my driving habits so that I purposely go to 5 Points just to pass by the store to pick up my gas or gum or occasionally a cup of coffee or a hoagie. So it's definitely impacted the neighborhood. One thing I've noticed, do you have a cleaning maintenance schedule at that store or at your stores that would maintain not just the inside of the store, but also on the outside of it as well? It's just such a volume of people come there. I mean, just for people, things get messy. People drop stuff and it ends up on the ground. Do you have any kind of maintenance program in place to clean it, to keep it?
Yeah, so we do have maintenance programs both for our associates, so it's part of our the training and also for the requirement for our store teams to empty trash bins, to, like, for instance, the third shift, a lot of times we'll have the opportunity to do some deeper cleaning if needed. We also sometimes bring in third-party cleaners to help, with some of the stores, depending on what it is. So yes, we do have that ability to do that. I know with some of our busier stores, there's requirements that they give you a range of how often, for instance, to change the trash bins. Obviously, a busier store, they try to do that more often, but we also may have more of a labor force working at that particular store. Some shifts we might have, 3 or 4 associates. Some shifts might have 12, 14 people working. So our store managers, we entail them the ability to staff the stores, which is needed for not just running the store itself, but also keeping it clean and respectful.
I have 2 questions actually. Like you would do a traffic study anytime you open up a new store. Do you ever do like a crime study? Because I'm interested on our resources tapping into our EMS or our police resources in West Goshen, which could be substantial or not. So I'm just wondering if you do anything when you go into a new store, what you anticipate.
So we do look at a variety of different measures when we look at locations. We do look at a CAP store, crime against people. So that's obviously been, especially in more recent years, unfortunately, something more that we look at in a hard degree. I mean, people, obviously, it's been on the news about, for instance, an example, the city of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, we've had some situations where we've had to close some of our stores. So we are very much in tune with looking at locations. When we pick a site, we make sure that before we build the store, that we review not just during the day, but also the night. So we'll do sometimes night rides with our management leadership to understand what does it really look like, not just understanding numbers, but actually physically being out there at nighttime at various hours to see what the vibe is, who's out there walking around, driving around. We like to hope that customers coming to our sites are reputable people. Unfortunately, we can't dictate who enters our stores. I know that we pride ourselves in having a security system, not just with cameras, but access to provide to the local police departments. That way, if there is an issue, we can immediately call out for assistance, and two, to make sure it's a deterrent, hopefully, for people, seeing that there's cameras everywhere, both inside and outside the store throughout the parking lot. We like to say, and some people always have comments about our lighting in our parking lot sometimes. We also say we do that because we don't want to have any dark areas on the parking lot. We want to make sure that it's safe for everybody, not just our store associates, but also customers, delivery drivers, so on and so forth.
Is that something you would share with West Goshen, the stats on that crime? Or with our police, I should say, or
we can, yeah. So in other stores, for instance, that we can, if there's a concern or something that would be able to be shared, we can definitely share.
For this particular store?
Yes, for this particular location. I mean, we obviously have stats on our existing stores, store 25. Right. So we can provide that, to the police department if needed. I mean, everything is accounted for and saved with the information of what happened.
Okay. And the last question I have is, when you're doing the site planning, are you considering the stormwater engineering practices for the entire site versus just the property parcel that you're on?
I think perhaps our engineer could probably answer that better. Okay. I'll reserve that question to him.
Okay, thank you.
Board time?
Over to you, Kristen.
Yeah, just a couple questions. So you mentioned the existing Wawa site down the road. Does Wawa own that lot and building?
The store on 5 Points Road or the one on 25?
No, the one on South High.
We lease that site.
You lease that site, okay.
I believe we lease that site.
So your intention is to, when the lease is up, whoever owns it will lease it to somebody else, okay. And then I guess I'm a little bit confused, and I don't remember if West Goshen has had to have any intermunicipal transfer of liquor licenses. Do you know if you were intending to put a liquor license at this location, if you would need to go through that process?
We would have to if it comes from outside the municipality.
Okay, so just so the board understands that if they ever obtain a liquor license and seek to place it at this location, there's another public hearing process you have to go through.
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess just to point out that we won't have to get into the details of that particular aspect of it because that's a whole separate legal proceeding and a whole separate application. And as of right now, you don't have a liquor license for this location, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I'm a little bit confused on the EV charging spaces. So Wawa doesn't seek out those charging companies, the charging companies seek to come to your locations?
We provide them, we seek them out in the sense of providing them information about what sites we're at, mostly primarily sites that are, I would say is the answer, they're fully approved. They are going to be built. Those locations we provide to them, then they determine if they are going to bring their EV charging booths to that location.
And you just provide on your plan a location that would be acceptable?
We usually try to give a location that's labeled either potential or future EV charging spaces.
And will the board see that on the site plan that's been submitted to date?
I don't know if you'd spent on it, no, because that would probably be during the land development phase.
All right, because that's just something that this board is working on and we probably want to see. So, okay.
Oh yeah, well we want the EV charging. We understand that's a wave of the future.
Would you be agreeable to that as a condition should the board approve this application to propose an EV charging location, should the company actually decide to choose you?
It would have to come down to the company because we would want them, like I said, at all of our locations. Unfortunately, Tesla, EVgo, Electrify America are the three major ones. They're the ones that will say that. New Jersey, there are some municipalities that require. Actually, I think the state of New Jersey does require. I think it's a minimum of 2, I believe. That's not too familiar with the requirements in New Jersey, but in Pennsylvania, we're at the mercy of the EV charging companies.
But suffice it to say that you would provide ample spaces for it, and if a charging company was interested, you would let them be on your property?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have anything further. So we're going to go to the neighbors, or the parties, I should say. And again, please limit your questions to this particular witness, and particularly to the evidence that they have presented. So from Aurora Estates LLC, do you have any questions for this witness? Debbie, can you let them use?
Oh, sure.
Do you have any?
Yes, I do.
Okay, sir, you're Mr. Dial, D-Y-A-L, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mike, is very happy to have you here.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
So knowledgeable about in and out of the Wawa. Can you please tell me what is the customer count of the Wawa on existing you have?
The legacy store that's just up the street, unfortunately, I cannot provide that.
And why you cannot do that?
It's proprietary to our business. I mean, if we provide this information, it could adversely affect us with our competition.
Okay. I'm not asking for customer data, I'm asking for customer count. I know you cannot count vehicle, but you can count customer, that's fine. What about about the foot traffic over there coming from the university?
Sir, hold the microphone closer. I know I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, you know that we have a foot traffic also coming from the university. You are familiar?
There are sidewalks, I believe, that run from Westchester University to that existing store.
How many parking you have right now?
I believe we're 25 spaces at an existing store.
Is enough for you?
If you look at certain times of the day, I don't think it is.
So you propose 25 parking right now in this store. And 25 parking is not enough for you in the existing store where you don't have fuel.
I think you might be confused. Are you talking about the existing store?
Existing store, how many parking you have?
I believe it's 25.
How many exits you have?
3 exits.
And it's not enough for you?
Well, it's challenging to say because of the size of that parking lot.
Because I'm next door to
Sir,
you.
one person can speak. So if you ask a question, you have to let him answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I believe it's the size of the parking lot where you don't have ample or significant throats of the exit driveways.
Yeah. Now the store will be bigger and you will start selling fuel and you have 25 parkings.
Is there a question?
And
Are you seeing our store that we're proposing to build?
Yeah.
It has more than 25 parking
How many
spaces.
parking spaces you have?
I believe we're at 72. Sorry, 73.
That's fine. How many kinds of fuel you will sell? How many grades? You will sell diesel?
We will sell diesel, yes.
You will accommodate all the trucks coming to your store?
We will accommodate trucks, but not tractor trailer trucks.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. DeSiderio left. I thought I saw him walk out. Yeah, okay. Ms. Kramer, do you have any questions for this witness?
I just have one small one.
Hold on, wait till we get you the microphone so we can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You had mentioned about the one on 5 Point Road being a big success and this one's going to be less. I have seen going by there several times, traffic coming out of Wawa, getting onto 5 Points Road is sometimes you see cars backed up. It's hard to get out of there, really. It's really hard. I think it's going to be easier this location.
I believe it is going to be easier, and the major reason why, and our engineer will probably get more into detail, our exit and entrances are within the limits of a shopping center, so they're not on a public road. I know there's definitely challenges associated with our existing store on 5 Points Road. 5 Points Road is a public road, as is Westchester Pike. At this location, we don't have any access points that are actually directly onto an access road. Now, they do eventually come up to South High Street, which is a public road. There is a signal at that location, so it makes for in our opinion, a situation that would appear from the designing aspect a better situation than what we have at our 5 Points Road store.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pritchard, do you have any questions? Okay, she's going to give you a microphone. Thank you, Debbie, for...
I hope this is the gentleman that I'm asking a question that has the answer. Is your proposal for use proposing 6 or 8 filling stations at your site?
So the new site that you see on the screen here, we have 8 pumps. 8 pumps. Each pump has 2 fueling positions.
Okay.
So it's 16 fueling. You can have 16 people filling up at the same time.
So that is currently being proposed for use.
Correct.
Okay. The next question I have is, clearly you're expecting significant traffic, otherwise you wouldn't have proposed this site. My question is, why can you not share that information about what your estimate for increased traffic is?
We will have a traffic consultant that will be able to talk about the trips generated. I think what Mr. Spiegel was saying is, in terms of customer counts, that's proprietary business operation information. But we certainly, when we get to our traffic consultant, he'll have all the numbers to explain with the trips that will be generated from the proposed use.
And then, quite frankly, the Department of Transportation could say yay or nay.
They absolutely have the jurisdiction in this matter, and assuming we got through this process with the Board of Supervisors, the next step would be a full design. There's already, I'm getting ahead of myself because we have someone who will say all this, but just to answer your question, there's been some initial dialogue with PennDOT. There would be a highway occupancy permit required, and absolutely PennDOT would be the one issue.
So we could go down this road quite a ways and then be told no.
Well, PennDOT can't say no to the use.
What?
PennDOT does not have jurisdiction over whether the use is allowed. So that's a zoning decision that this board issues.
Okay,
but PennDOT has to approve what's called the highway occupancy permit.
Okay, so but isn't that integral part of either getting approval or not?
Well, they're different entities that give different approvals. So before Wawa could actually open, they have stages of different approvals they need, one of which is this conditional use from this board. After, assuming they get that, they also have to get what's called land development approval from this board. And then there's other, what we call outside agency permits. So PennDOT is one of those outside agencies that has to issue approval for the highway occupancy permit. And that's specific to their driveway leading out onto High Street, which is a state road. But that's a separate process. But you're right in that PennDOT ultimately could say, not necessarily, no, we're not going to approve it, but with certain improvements being done, that may be what PennDOT's response is.
So conceivably, what we're hearing tonight may not come to fruition.
Well, from a use perspective, this is just one piece of the puzzle. If PennDOT either denies the HOP or imposes conditions that the applicant doesn't accept, then yes, it can't go forward.
Understood.
Okay.
One last question. I don't know if this is the gentleman who should ask it or if I should save it till the very end. But I want to know if in all of this process, there is going to be someone who is an expert in the field about noise pollution, air pollution, and quite frankly, this new entity being the entryway to Westchester University. Wrong person, I think.
We have a registered landscape architect who will walk through the site plan and the various ordinance requirements with respect to what the ordinance requires for conditional use and for this particular use. And then we have a traffic consultant who will walk through the requirements from a traffic perspective, what's required under the ordinance.
So in answer to my question about those experts on all the kinds of pollution we could add to our neighborhood, the answer is yes, there will be.
Well, I think anytime you have a use, if it's permitted or not permitted, you're going to have some impact to the environment. The testimony we're going to propose is going to essentially state that there won't be any detrimental impact that's exceeding what would normally be expected from the same type of use.
The worrisome part of all that is that we find out 5 years later that, in fact, there was a negative impact.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is a time for this debate, but
I just hope you consider it now.
Wawa will be bound also in terms of the gasoline sales. There are certain state requirements of what they're required to do. So in terms of the environment and how they have to operate the gasoline sales, and that will all be fully compliant with DEP standards.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that too, is that we as Wawa, we have over 1,000 stores in our chain. About 80% of them are fuel stores. So it's not like we're new to the business of fuel sales. With respect to, like you made a comment about noise pollution, if there's extra traffic, if there's lighting, some people have complaints about lighting. We've modified our lights. We've done a variety of different things with our trash dumpsters, our compactors to limit the experience or to limit the amount of pollution that's been out there. And we also like to say, ultimately, we try to go beyond what the requirements are. We don't do the bare minimum. We like to say we're as best as we can. We try to exceed those, whether it's ADA requirements, whether it's noise requirements, so on and so forth. So we try to do what we think is the best to the ability that we can to become a manageable and a good partner in the community.
Okay. Next person is Mr. Stratton. Do you have any questions?
Yes.
You had talked about two, and I can see them up there, the entrances to the Wawa portion, but in fact, they drain out to the common area so that you are getting cars from there out to High Street. You're not factoring that in. There's going to be a lot of gridlock right there. And in the meeting for the Planning Commission, there was a plan to do a one-way in and a one-way out.
And we actually do have two other witnesses that will be talking about those improvements and changes that were made to the plan to accommodate the Planning Commission's concerns that were raised.
Thank you.
Is it Mr. Stratton? Okay. Ms. DeBenny, do you have any questions? Okay. Why don't you come forward?
When you decide on a location, how many times during that beginning process do you come out and watch the traffic or the interactions of that area? And I only ask that because if I go and I get the trash can after the trash guy comes, it's medium traffic. If I go out to check the mail at lunchtime, the off-ramp is backed up and both lanes going in and out are gridlocked because you have college students coming to Colonial or going southbound to other areas for lunch. You have folks that work from home or in offices going to lunch. And then, let's say at the end of the day, right, guys?
Ms. DeBenny, please keep it to a question, though, okay?
Okay, question is,
specific for the question.
How often do you check? I feel like all the meetings I've come to, there hasn't really, in my opinion, been a real substantial number or evaluation given to us as far as the traffic, and that's my concern. So how often would you say you came out to High Street and observed the different times of the day, the traffic?
We do have a traffic consultant who's going to he can give a specific number.
Okay, I'll go to my next question. You mentioned the lights. And again, coming to all these meetings, my concern is, obviously, we're concerned about the security for your Wawa, but I'm concerned about let's see, 40 homes on the two roads adjacent to mine, in addition to the homes on South High. What are we going to do? Because I noticed there's, as everyone has mentioned, the amount of gas pumps. What are you going to do as far as all the homes with regards to the lights for the gas pumps? And in conjunction with that question, I know quite a few folks asked you about delivery times. Are there no delivery times then in the evenings at all?
So I'll start with your last point of that question about deliveries. We have a variety of deliveries. It depends on the area and the location. I've talked to some of the local general managers to understand better when our deliveries are. For this particular location, and then for a lot of our locations, we understand overnight deliveries, when I'd say overnight, probably anywhere from 10 or 11 o'clock to about 5 in the morning or so, are challenges for not just us to a certain degree because we have less people working at the store, but also for the residents that are around us. So we, and as I was speaking before with our delivery times, and based on the type of deliveries, We actually, I would say for the most part, it is during the daytimes. Now, during times of the year, close to winter, as it gets dark now, 4:30, 5 o'clock, some of those deliveries may be in the darker hours, but we try to keep them as best as we can during the daylight times. It's safer for our delivery drivers, it's safer for customers and our associates throughout the site. Some of our sites we try to schedule as best as we can that's not during our peak hours, because when it's the peak hours, you have more cars, more travel of cars and vehicles throughout the parking lot. So we do our best to try to avoid that where we can.
And that's my concern, is I feel like what I've been hearing is more about for Wawa as opposed to, and I get it, you don't want tractor trailers and delivery coming in at your peak hours, but then my concern is that's why I was asking if there are any, because I've gone by on High Street and seen the tractor trailers and it's been late. And that's just a concern with, kids, we have older folks and just folks my age having to get up early for work or needing sleep. So obviously some of my questions are going to be more for traffic, so I will hold those for now. But that was my concern, is I guess really the bulk of my question for you is, will you be going out to evaluate a little bit more the traffic situation? Because I'm not sure that I don't know what kind of evaluation has been with the ramp and 202. It's very, very busy. And
again, we do have another witness who did
That's fine.
prepare a traffic impact study, which is a very lengthy document that was submitted in conjunction with this application, and he will be testifying.
That's fine. I can hold the rest of my questions then.
And I do want to add one thing to what your comments were, having to do with deliveries and noise and things that can disrupt some of the residents. When we build a new store, for instance, this one here, the delivery zone, I would call it, is behind the building here. And what we do when we design these parking lots is for the ability for our deliveries, especially in our larger vehicles, for them to be able to pull in and not back up. At our store up the road, unfortunately, there's no ability to go around the store, so they're going to have to back into the parking, or not even into a parking space, back into the parking lot. Obviously, from a safety concern, because this is what's required, there is backup alarms. So when we do the new stores, one of the things that we try to do, actually not going to try, we do it wherever we can, is we have the ability to navigate around our site, and we ask that our civil engineers, when we design all the locations for the parking, for the islands, for the canopy, that it gives us the ability for all of our deliveries to navigate so we don't have to go to back up. So that's just one example of what we try to do for our sites.
And just to piggyback off that, where you were pointing earlier for where the gas is being delivered, that's literally almost in front of my front door. So before I forget this, I don't know if you're aware of this and how much goes into researching the area, but we have sinkhole issues. And as Dr. Stratton had mentioned in the meeting before, there's a lot of subterranean water issues. Has there been any additional research on Wawa's part to make sure that where you're digging for these gas lines, I mean, that's a huge concern for me.
Absolutely. Whenever we go into a site, we have requirements for what we want from an environmental standpoint. So we ask for geotech reports. We actually have third-party vendors that do a review of these reports. We do extended information that we require if it's a karst topography, a topography that would have sinkholes and underground water perhaps. So there is a lot of information that we look at. We have a lot of stores, and I say a lot, we have a substantial number of stores that are in karst topographies where there are possibility of sinkholes, and we have not had an issue at those locations.
But have you, for this location, have you done that yet? Is there anything that we can see as a community to know that we're safe? Because that's literally where those gas pumps are. That's my front door. So it's a concern. And will that be something you could share with us so that we see that there's been research done so that we know it's safe?
We have done some of the geotech report investigating. I don't know if that's been finalized yet in the sense of our third-party reviewers. The only reason why I asked that, we may not be able to reveal it yet, and that might be something more for the developer, is depending what comes out of those reports, we as Wawa might require them to go out and do more investigative work. So it may be an incomplete informational packet that is provided.
Okay. That's all I have for now. My other questions are for other folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
No question.
And Mr. Crum?
What percentage of Wawa stores in West Goshen do not have access to public right-of-way, like your not have direct access to a public right of way like this one you're proposing?
I believe our other 3 stores, not counting the legacy store, the other 3 stores in our township, I believe all have access to a direct access.
So that would be 0%, do not have access to a public right of way.
Well, they
Direct access to a public right of way.
I believe they all do. At some point, everybody has to
Right,
get the public right.
Sir, what? Let him answer your question, okay?
So it's 0%, do not have direct access to a public right of way.
I would have to say 0.
Correct, okay, good. And what percent of your stores, like kind of globally, do not have direct access to a public right of way? Would you say what percent?
It's hard to put a percentage to that because then we're looking at stores not just within the Pennsylvania area, which is primarily the market that I work in, but it's all throughout down to Florida, Virginia, all these other, New Jersey. So I couldn't tell you a percentage. I do know that all of our stores at some point, the ability to get out or get into the store, does lead to a public right of way of some sort of public.
Yeah, eventually. It has to, obviously.
It has to.
But you spoke about Wawa's desire to be at the intersection of Main and Main, implying that your desire is to be on a public right of way, correct?
If possible.
Okay.
Is that it, Mr. Crum?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Just want to time check at the moment. So, how are you doing? It's been an hour and 3/4. Are your fingers exhausted yet?
My fingers are always exhausted. But it just depends how much longer you want to go.
So originally I was going to take a break, suggest we take a break, but given that we really only want to go, 8 or shortly thereafter, if you're okay to keep going, we'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Is that good with the rest of the board?
Yeah.
You good with the applicant?
It's fine with us.
Okay. All right.
But you're not going to get through your next witness then if we end? I could get through them, but I can't control all the questions, and I would be surprised if...
Well, we may have to take, depending on how much testimony is being given, we may have to stop at some point and adjourn the meeting, or maybe we get through the testimony and some board questions and then take it adjourn. We'll just have to see.
Well, we'll go with the roll here.
Okay, all right.
So your next witness. All right, could you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, it is Alex Peel. Our business address is 53 West James Street, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
And with whom are you employed in what capacity?
RGS Associates, we're a land planning civil engineering firm, and I'm a principal with the firm.
And Mr. Peel's CV is marked in the board's package as Exhibit A12. He has over 23 years experience as a registered, and he's a registered landscape architect and has a number of credentials and qualifications, and has testified before a number of municipal bodies. I'm happy to voir dire him, or I would request that the board accept him as an expert in landscape architecture.
No problem. We accept Mr. Peel.
And Mr. Peel, was your firm responsible for preparations of the plans for this application?
Yes, it was.
And you're familiar with the subject property, its features, as well as the surrounding area?
Yes.
And referring to Exhibit A4, which is the aerial, and I know Mr. Spiegel and Mr. Waters both testified generally to this, but could you describe again for the board and the public the exact location and the uses surrounding the property?
Okay. So as we've been discussing, the site that we're looking at is the existing Parkway Center. For orientation, Route 202 is here. South High Street is running essentially north-south in this direction. The existing center is the building that you see running here, which is largely parallel to 202. It does bend with the off-ramp. There is an off-ramp off 202 that comes to this location, which is the existing signalized entrance into the shopping center. Just north of the shopping center, as referenced earlier, that shares the same entrance way is the existing McDonald's in this location. The the circulation in the center currently is there's an existing concrete boulevard down the center of the entrance drive. That really opens up to a free flow of parking in this area. There is parking along the south side of the McDonald's. Driveway circulates around one way to the McDonald's. Parking along the north side of the existing center with a service drive that extends across the back of the shopping center, largely parallel again to the ramp and 202.
Okay, you covered about 8 of my questions in one, so that's good. That means we can move forward very quickly. Was your office also responsible for preparation of the conditional use plan that was submitted as part of the application?
Yes, it was.
And I'm going to refer you to Exhibit A15, which is the alternate Wawa store site plan, an updated version of the conditional use plan. Could you please describe for the board what is shown on this plan?
Yes. What Mike was reviewing earlier was our initial site plan. That was included with the conditional use application that was submitted to the township. That application and plan was then reviewed with the Planning Commission at their October meeting. Based on that October meeting, we updated that plan, which is the plan that you see here. The location and configuration of the buildings and the canopy are really the same, but I'll just kind of walk through the way that the site will function based on the alternate plan. Coming into the site, there is access off of South High that will be better defined. We'll get into that in more detail with the traffic discussion. But that will come into the site. One of the pieces of feedback that we received, this entrance originally was an ingress-egress, so full movement. There was concern over the circulation there, so what we did was we changed that to a right only into the pad site. And that's about 130 feet into the pad or into the site, where currently about 40 feet in you start having cross traffic in the existing center. Moving the rest of the way in, there is a second entrance here. That will be full ingress and egress. We did widen that a little bit to improve circulation in that location. Also, at the entrance point, there will be a handicap ramp located here on the southeast corner of the intersection. A sidewalk was added that will extend back and provide a connection to the proposed Wawa here. Then there will be a walk that connects the rest of the way back to the remaining portion of the shopping center in this location. Access to the rear of the existing center will remain through the Wawa parking lot here and extend back to the existing service drive behind the center. Also, as part of the updates, there was a fair amount of discussion about the existing McDonald's parking spaces here. There was essentially a strip or a rumble strip that was added in this location to better define vehicles backing out of those spaces to help with the circulation out of the center. Striping was also included in addition to the extension of the existing boulevard into the site, and again, that's to avoid cross traffic at this initial entrance point.
And you mentioned that a number of these improvements were made to address concerns that were raised by the Planning Commission. Did they also consider recommendations that the traffic consultant made with respect to this plan?
That's correct. We did have the opportunity between the October Planning Commission meeting and the November Planning Commission meeting to meet with the township engineer and the township's traffic consultant. Actually reviewed this plan, made some additional modifications to it, which are reflected in the updated plan that's provided here.
And do the plans, in fact, incorporate all of the recommendations that the township traffic consultant made to date with respect to the internal circulation?
Yes, they do.
And do you believe that these additional improvements incorporated at the suggestion of the Planning Commission and the Township Traffic Engineer provide for an even more improved internal circulation?
Yes, they will.
In designing the conditional use plan, did you take into consideration the truck circulation pattern?
Yes, we did.
And I know that Mr. Spiegel kind of generally testified as to the gasoline fuel circulation, but there are several exhibits that we have included, if you could walk the board through those with respect to the turning movements for fire oil tanker and WB50 turning plan. And those are marked as exhibit A16, A17, and A18.
So starting with exhibit A16, this is a truck turning or a fire truck turning exhibit. This exhibit, or the version of it that was consistent with the original conditional use plan, was submitted to the township for review as part of the initial application. It was then updated with the revisions to the design that I just noted based on the Planning Commission review. This plan was submitted to the emergency or the fire marshal for review. They did not have any questions or comments regarding it. So what's shown here is the fire truck coming in, making a turning movement around the canopy, being able to circulate all the way around that, as well as through the rear of the store as well.
And based on these turning templates, do you believe that the proposed circulation is sufficient to accommodate an adequate and safe turning movements?
Yes.
Are any pedestrian improvements proposed internally on the site?
Yes. So included with pedestrian improvements would be that connection to the handicap curb ramp that will extend back to the store. There will be sidewalk along the store as well as the connection that will go through the parking lot and connect back to the to the existing center.
Do the overall improvements result in a reduction from the existing impervious coverage and building coverage?
Yes, it does.
And although the improvements result in a reduction in the impervious and building coverage, is stormwater management facilities proposed?
Yes.
And referring your attention to sheet 6 of the conditional use plan, is that one of the conceptual stormwater management plans?
Yes, it is.
And
could you just refer which exhibit that is, please, Ms.
Sorry,
Shulsky?
it is exhibit, I believe it was sheet 6 of the conditional use plan, the original conditional use plan, which is exhibit A14.
Thank you.
Certainly. And is there currently any stormwater management existing on the property today?
Currently, there's no stormwater management. There's only stormwater conveyance, which would consist of inlets and storm pipes. This is the plan that was submitted as part of the conditional use application. And what we're showing here conceptually is a subsurface stormwater management facility here to the rear of the store, and a connection to the existing stormwater conveyance system that exists in the parking lot.
And obviously, should the board grant conditional use approval, the applicant would have to have the plan fully designed and engineered and be back before the township for land development approval, which would include a full design of the stormwater management. Is that correct?
Yes, and part of that design would include geologic study of the site to ensure that it's appropriate for the proposed facilities for the stormwater management, as well as the county and state review of the NPDES permit.
And have you reviewed the West Goshen Township zoning ordinance with respect to the specific conditional use standards relevant to the proposed convenience store use?
Yes.
And in your opinion, does the applicant's proposal satisfy those standards?
Yes.
I'm going to walk you through those very quickly. Aside from the prior variance relief that was granted and some of the existing non-conforming conditions on the site that are permitted to continue, does the applicant's proposal otherwise comply with all applicable area and bulk requirements of the C1 commercial zoning district?
Yes.
Does the applicant's proposal call for all gasoline pump dispensers and automobile window washing materials to be covered by a canopy that would be illuminated by overhead light during non-daylight hours?
Yes, it does.
Does the applicant's site plan allow for sufficient space for vehicles to stack while waiting for gasoline without backing up onto a public street?
Yes, it does.
Is the canopy proposed to be set back at least 50 feet from the right-of-way?
Yes, it would be, and that's the distance that would be measured from the public right-of-way here to the closest corner of the canopy is in this location.
And other than the products that Mr. Spiegel mentioned with respect to the propane tanks that are required to be outside and the ice box, would Wawa display any products for sale outdoors?
No, it would not.
Would all trash generated by the Wawa be stored in a fenced-in, screened enclosure for a period not to exceed 7 days?
Yes, it would.
Does the proposed number of parking spaces satisfy the requirements of Section 84-55 of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, the individual parking spaces as well as a parking space at each of the fueling stations.
And in your opinion, does the proposal include sufficient landscaping and screening in accordance with the land development ordinance around the perimeter of the lot?
Yes, it does.
Do you have a photograph showing the existing view looking north along with the proposed view with the landscaping? Referring to Exhibit A20, if you could walk the board through that exhibit.
So the view on the top is the existing view, which is looking northbound coming off the ramp. Currently, the shopping center's pavement goes all the way up to the curb line, as shown here, and with parking about 10 feet off of the existing curb line here. So what we're showing as part of the plan is that area would be turned into a landscape area with shrub hedge as well as trees that would line along that entrance. So the layout of the plant material shown in the lower view, which is the same view just with Photoshop of the hedge and trees, is based on the landscape plan that's included in the conditional use package.
Does the proposal for the 16 gasoline pumps comply, or will it comply with the regulations of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry?
Yes, it will.
Does the applicant's lighting plan ensure, in your opinion, that the lighting of the property would not shine onto other lots or create a glare on adjacent lots or streets?
Yes, it does.
And there was also a lighting plan that was submitted as part of the conditional use package, correct?
Yes.
And then, assuming that the conditional use were granted, then the plan would be designed in accordance with the land development ordinance, subject to any waivers, correct?
Yes, it would.
Are you also familiar with the general conditional use standards as set forth in Section 84-75 of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, I am.
And in your opinion, does the applicant's proposal comply with those applicable standards?
Yes, it does.
Now, you testified as to the proposed landscaping and that there was a plan sheet incorporated. In your opinion, does this show sufficient buffer area and are the proposed structures set back far enough distance to shield the Wawa use from adjoining uses and properties?
Yes, the township has standards both for structures, for landscape areas, and that is what the plan's based on.
And is there adequate water and sewer capacity available for the proposed use?
Yes, capacity requests were submitted to both the Township and Aqua PA, and both have confirmed that there would be adequate capacity for the project.
And for the record, Exhibit A21 is a water capacity confirmation email, and Exhibit A22 is a sewer capacity letter. You also already testified that you had coordinated with the fire marshal and that there was sufficient internal circulation to accommodate the fire truck, correct?
Yes, that's this correspondence here.
And that is marked as Exhibit A23. Would there be any issue with the fire department being able to access the building to reach the highest points of the proposed Wawa?
No.
In your opinion, would there be any increase in surface water runoff at the boundaries of the premises beyond what currently exists?
No, with the reduction that you'd noted between the existing condition of impervious cover to what will be proposed, there will not be an increase.
That's all the questions I have.
I think so. I think we're going to call it a day or a night at this point. We've been at this for 2 hours. It's a lot of information the board's received. So I'd like to leave the hearing open, and we'll just have to look for another date.
We will, the board had looked at their calendars, Debbie, in advance and selected Monday, December 18th. Can you see if that works for you and your consultants? And if not, we picked December 21st was also available, correct? Yeah.
I can't do that day.
The 18th.
I apologize. I have an appointment that I can't.
Can you do the 21st?
I can do that.
Guy, is the 21st available? Okay. And did we want to start Thursday? Yes. Okay. Is that a Thursday? Did we say? Okay. So just so everybody understands, what we're going to do is we're going to close the record tonight. No further notices are going to be mailed, but we will reconvene at 6 p.m. on Thursday, December 21st, 2023 in the same room. Anybody have any questions about the process moving forward? Okay. And if, as we said, if there were neighbors that weren't able to come tonight, they can come to the meeting on December 21st. And again, we'll start that hearing again, going through the party process. Okay? So thank you, everybody, for participating this evening, and we'll call it a night. Jim, are you available on that night? Good job. Okay.
I can go to this township, that's why I do things. I do the zoning and I do the board of supervisors for this township. So we went to see Karen, where she goes. So each person kind of has their own.
I saw you on the trial.